ايوه ايوه لا حبيبي ايوه دمر الدنيا هون.
Also, you know, Israel's a very divided. Israel's a tiny country for a start. Iran's massive. Iran will recover. Even if the regime falls, they will recover. You know, Israel gets a few hits. It's a tiny country. But I have to see.
I think that everyone, from what I've seen of our coverage, from our readers, and from just people in general, from the Muslim world and elsewhere, I think everyone wished that Iran had a nuke. Do you think they would dare take out the big guy?
Yes, of course. I think if they could kill him, they would kill him.
Okay, because obviously people are speculating.
No red lines anymore, Robert.
We could see Salman Rushdie style terror attacks, lone wolf terror attacks happening all over the globe. I think that American political, not even military assets could be targeted in attacks. I think that the gloves would be off. I think the IRGC may go back to tactics that we've seen in the past. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, Assalamu alaikum, and welcome back to another episode of Muslims Uncensored with me, Robert Carter, and Roshan Saleh. Now, obviously, everyone has been talking about the massive escalation, the war that's kicked off between Iran and Israel. This, of course, is the latest escalation in a wider regional conflict which started on October the 7th, 2023. Now, there are many questions surrounding where this could go. Could we see the US enter and attack Iran? Could we see, for example, Iran go for that nuke, which they probably should have had by now? Will we see just a long drawn-out conflict, or could it end abruptly if some kind of deal is struck? This is all going to be discussed on this episode, and I highly encourage you all to leave your comments in the comment section below, which we'll be reacting to, as this conflict will probably go on for days, possibly even weeks or longer. Assalamu alaikum, Roshan.
Welcome, Sam.
No funny intro today. There isn't much to laugh about.
Let's just get on with it.
Let's just get on with it. Obviously, the latest headline we've got on 5 Pillars is 8 Israelis killed, over 100 injured in the latest Iranian missile attack. That was published 4 hours ago. Quite frankly, the attacks going both ways are coming in thick and fast, so it's quite possible that there are more attacks happening even right now. I'll have to double check the headlines, but over the past few days, what's your reaction to everything that's been happening?
Well, we did a live, didn't we, I think a few days ago, and yeah, it's such a fast-moving situation. Obviously, Israel is pummeling Iran, and they're going for civilian infrastructure. They've killed a lot of generals, commanders, scientists. Quite shocking in a kind of shock and awe strike in the first few hours and days. But Iran has responded, and they've responded with ballistic missiles, with drones. A lot of them have gone through. They've caused havoc in Tel Aviv. They've killed lots of people as well. So I think Israel is normally in the position where it just pounds and pounds and pounds, and there's nothing coming back. Whereas now, something's coming back, and Israelis are feeling like what a war really feels like. Yeah. So it's a fast-moving situation. I have many, many questions. Perhaps I won't say too much now because we can talk it through with our guest. I'm unsure how this is going to develop. I can see it going badly for Iran, but I can also see it going badly for Israel. But yeah, we'll talk these issues through as the show goes on, inshallah.
Absolutely. We have an expert guest who's going to join us as well to talk a little bit more about this. We're going to bring him on very shortly. Just a few things which people have been observing. These are obviously daily attacks now. So Iran is using its missiles, its drones to attack Israel from distance. Israel is relying more so on airstrikes, its air fighter jets. It obviously controls the skies. But we've also noticed air defense playing out. So we've got Israeli air defense, the Iron Dome and so on. It appears as if they've been struggling to hold off Iranian projectiles. There's even been some footage I've seen of projectiles not just missing, but also perhaps even turning back and hitting Israel. So there's some flaws potentially being exposed. But also Iranian air defense appears to be performing better than I think many would have expected. They're not, of course, blocking all of Israel's attacks, but according to some Iranian media reports that I've seen, they're actually performing way better than I think a lot of people would have anticipated. They are taking down some of Israel's attacks as well. So we are now sort of judging the two sides, and we're seeing for the first time in a real war scenario the strengths and weaknesses of both sides. So this is why it's going to be quite an interesting discussion. So coming onto the show now, we have Sayed Mohsin Abbas, who is a political analyst and host of the Deep Dive Perspective podcast. And this is someone who I know has a lot of experience speaking about Iran and also the region as a whole. So Sayed, thank you very much for joining us on the show.
Thank you for inviting me, Rob, and hi to Roshan as well.
Assalamu alaikum, Mohsin.
Yes, assalamu alaikum. So first of all, Sayed, let me just ask you for your reaction to everything that's been happening over the past couple of days.
Well, it's quite unprecedented, quite breathtaking, to be fair. I think we've had a lot of firsts in what's gone on. This is the first time that there's a sustained attack on Israel on the scale that we're seeing. I think perhaps since the wars with Egypt back in Yom Kippur and all the wars and such like things. We've had, of course, Hezbollah fighting over the last 2 years. We've had Hamas, etc., of course, doing the operations, but nothing on this scale, this kind of state-to-state, if you like, conflict. So these are unprecedented, uncharted waters, really. So nobody can predict fully what's going to happen. The technology that's at play here, the missiles, the ballistics, the hypersonics, the drones, all of this is really some state-of-the-art fighting equipment that's being employed and deployed. And we're seeing it unfold in real time. The public these days gets to switch on to their TikToks and their YouTubes, etc., and they're watching it all as it unfolds. But at the heart of this whole issue is really that Israel, who I regard as a terrorist state, with America, is doing this. I mean, this is not an Israeli war on Iran. I believe it's an American, Zio-Western war, with Israel, of course, taking the front of the operation. So this is, first of all, to clear up. I mean, America is involved in this war. Their radars, their defense equipment, the planning, the logistics, most of the on-the-ground intelligence and psyops and black ops that are going on. This is all connected to the CIA's and the Mossad and other deep state outfits from the West. And what's their objective? It's the same one they've had since 1979. They want to dismantle the Islamic Republic's government. The Walayat Faqih system of leadership there is not to the taste of America. They want an Iran which is like the UAE or like the KSA, like all the other proxy subjugated puppet establishments in the region. And they want the oil in Iran, they want the gas of Iran, they want the resources that it has, the ports, the geopolitical kind of advantage. They want to drive China away from its Belt Road Initiative, in which Iran is also a pivotal centerpiece, if you like. And I think this is a war for dominance, and America trying to reassert its kind of power on a grander scale, but also destroying the upcoming power of Iran, which is very real.
So basically, you think that they're going for regime change now, because that's something which people are speculating. But I suspect the only way that they would possibly achieve that is if the US directly got involved and started to attack Iran as well. I don't think Israel can regime change Iran by itself. Do you speculate? Do you believe that might happen?
The US has organizations like the MKO and have a lot of kind of nefarious forces which they funded, supplied and supported. And we can see the evidence of that as the Iranian intelligence services, as we speak, are hunting down these kinds of operatives who have actually been doing quite a lot of the damage that you see. I think it's erroneous to think that all of the damage that the Israelis have done in their flights are down to them. Actually, there's a lot of agents that are working on the ground. I saw a van stopped within a tunnel in the middle of Tehran just yesterday on video, and 2 men arrested. They were basically fully equipped with mini drones and equipment to carry out the kind of operations that they've been doing, which have actually eliminated some of the key personnel in the IRGC, at least 6 nuclear scientists, and of course other very, very, very prominent figures in the Iranian establishment. Even I think yesterday was even the IRGC head of intelligence was also assassinated. So this is not an overnight operation. This is something that they planned for a very, very long time. And it's also possible that they could go to the next stage, which is to look at, say, dissident forces, insurgents in Balochistan, perhaps up in the Azeri areas of Iran, up in the north, the Kurds as well. They can trigger all sorts of groups like the ISIS Khorasan or the Al-Jundala forces. They have many terrorist forces inside Iran, and I suspect that what could happen next is that all of those forces are unleashed to create terror within Iran.
I know Roshan wants to come in.
Yeah, Mohsin, I mean, I've been to Iran twice. My last visit was quite a while ago, 7 or 8 years, I think. But the impression that I got when I visited was that, the government, the regime, whatever you want to call it, had solid support amongst a big base of the population. And I think that, when we talk about regime change and we look at, let's say, Assad's Syria, I don't think many people were willing to die for Assad's Syria. But I do believe that there are millions of Iranians who'd be willing to die for the Islamic Republic because they are ideologically wedded to that kind of thinking. At the same time, I thought that there was still quite a large minority that either had issues with the Islamic Republic or maybe 10-15% of the population, or I don't know, maybe I'm exaggerating, who actually would quite happily, drive into Tehran on the back of an American tank because they had this pro-Western mindset. So I don't know, am I that's why I don't think that the regime, the Islamic Republic, will fall quickly, even if Israel manages to militarily defeat it. I think it will take a land invasion, and even then I think that it will be really, really difficult to, and even if Ayatollah Khamenei is assassinated, I believe that this regime is here to stay for a long, long time. What do you reckon, Mohsin?
I can't disagree with that. I think your assessment's pretty much spot on. I mean, I think that they are planning to assassinate Ayatollah Khamenei. The Americans more or less said it just yesterday. Said we vetoed the possibility of doing that, but of course the Americans lie, just as the Israelis lie. So you don't know when they're telling truth, when they're just playing psychological games. But it's definitely their wish that they eliminate this establishment. And there are several other reasons. And I mean, you're totally right about the percentages within Iran. Without a doubt, when the revolution happened, although everybody was against the Shah, the majority of them wanted it, nobody really knew what was going to come next. In reality, I think the Americans were in on this to some extent because they were rooting for the neoliberal style Bani Sadr types, those secular liberals. And it was possibly a thought that after the Shah had been overthrown, it would be those guys who would take over because they'd never seen an Islamic government. They'd never seen a man like Ayatollah Khamenei actually come to power. And I think that they themselves were taken by surprise that this religious democracy emerged. And it's something which sticks in their gullet because it rejects imperialism, it rejects the puppeteering, it rejects imperialism in the sense that they don't want to give their sovereignty away, they don't want to give their resources over to the World Bank and to the usual suspects, the Bank of International Settlements. Iran has lost a major bridge in losing Syria, which I think has pushed back a lot of its efforts against Israel on its own territory. But within Iran, I think it's still very strong. And the Israelis doing what they've done, the Americans doing what they're doing now, will only actually galvanize Iranians more around the current government rather than turn it against them.
Well, you heard it from Mohsin there. There is obviously a lot going on. And I think he has mentioned quite well that the axis obviously has gone from its sort of peak just a couple of years ago. It was spread across the region, looked quite formidable. There was a lot of deterrence in place. I think America and Israel would have been very cautious about doing certain things. Now it's in such a bad situation that the war has now entered onto the streets of Tehran.
Yes.
And I have to admit, I always worried that would happen one day, but I thought that it wouldn't. I didn't think that Israel and America would be able to go that far. Iran's just got too much of a regional powerful presence now with all of its allies,
lost its shield,
all of its proxies, and it's lost its shields, it's lost its deterrence, as Mohsin said there, and now Iran is taking massive hits, and America obviously isn't. Israel is taking some hits, but how long can Iran take these hits?
I think it's
that's the question.
Yeah, that's the question. That's what I was asking Mohsin about. What happens when these ballistic missiles, kind of run out? What does Iran do next? That's why I was thinking that logically, if the Islamic world won't supply them with weapons, and they probably won't, then Russia and China, who are superpowers in their own right, and Israel is scared of, if they supply them with defensive weapons, like air defenses, for example. I'm not suggesting that Iran and Russia will send soldiers or aircraft or F-35s, but just give them some air defenses.
I think
maybe give them some ballistic weapons.
I think if Iran became a Syria, basically almost a failed state, if they were that badly beaten down,
that's not in
then
their
Russia
interest.
would come in to keep them going. At least just putting air defense. Like I said.
What China and Russia?
Do you know what China could support Iran via North Korea? So they might not directly send them like military hardware or support. But I think North Korea has already voiced
nuclear know-how.
Could do, or they could send like missiles, because North Korea is known for its ballistic missiles.
How would they get them there? But yeah,
how would it get them there? That's a big question, a big challenge. But yeah, possibly North Korea might be become quite an important ally in this scenario if it's a long war, if Iran starts to struggle. But Iran doesn't look like it's calming down. It's actually throwing a lot of missiles Israel's way on a daily basis.
I think the
Israel. How long can Israel hold out?
Well, let's talk about Israel now.
Israel
because I think the capacity for Iranians to take pain is much more than Israel.
Yeah,
the Iranians can take thousands of casualties, and they'll still be very, very defiant. The Israelis have a Western mindset. One or two people die and they start panicking, running for shelters, and their capacity to take pain, I'm sure, is far less than Iran's capacity to take pain. Also, Israel's a very divided. Israel's a tiny country for a start. Iran's massive. Iran will recover, even if the regime falls. They will recover. Israel gets a few hits. It's a tiny country, and it's a divided country. And you have Palestinians living within Israel who hate Israel. You have Israelis living within Israel who hate Netanyahu. So if the war starts going badly, especially for Netanyahu, then he could be overthrown. And then that could mean maybe not the end of the Zionist state for the time being, but it could mean the end of the war. Does the West really want the global economy to go into a spin? As Mohsin said, the ace in the pack is, can they close the Strait of Hormuz? If that happens, then the global economy tanks, and that is in nobody's interest. And then you'll see America putting pressure on Israel. So I think the Iranians do have some cards left. I don't think this is a done deal at all. I think worst case scenario for Iran is that they hunker down for a long war, and they take massive hits. Iran just bombs. But we all know that, Iran's been bombing Gaza non-stop. But it can only really change the equation on the ground by a land invasion.
Israel's been bombing Gaza.
Yeah, sorry. So what did I say?
Iran.
Yeah. Sorry.
Supports right like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think worst case scenario for Iran is that the US gets involved directly. That's
why I don't think they should attack. No matter you see, there's been quite bellicose statement. I've been listening to Iranian media nonstop for the last 2 days, and they keep on repeating this line about this is a US effort in conjunction with Israel. Now, I believe that's true, but I also believe it's probably very unwise for them to attack American bases, because the game changer here for Israel, because Israel wants America involved in this war, and I personally think Iran should not do that.
Yeah, if you look at the way the Western media is covering it, all of the pro-Israel assets are mobilizing to condemn Iran, they're making out that Israel is fighting a defensive war, that Iran was on the verge of getting a nuke, and that they were going to use it on Israel, and that every Iranian is an anti-Semite that hates all Jews, even though there's many Jews living in Iran happily and healthily. This is the WMD Iraq lie BS again, as far as I'm concerned. I don't think that Iran was on the verge of getting a nuke tomorrow. I don't think they were on the verge of using it against Israel. I don't think Iran even had intentions of fighting this war against Israel. Do you know what I mean?
No.
So it's lies. This was an effort to get the West to start a war. I think Netanyahu's going for it. What I can't figure out is who's playing who. Is Netanyahu starting this war with the hope that he can play Trump and get Trump to eventually enter it, and then that way he'll have his regime change and America dying for Israel in a war with Iran, a never-ending war, or is Trump the one playing Netanyahu? He's trying to get a deal with Iran. Maybe he gave Netanyahu the green light to attack Iran just to pressure them, to force them to the table on weak terms, because Trump doesn't just want a deal. He wants a strong American deal. And he probably doesn't understand that this type of threatening and attacking Iran won't work that way. So who's playing who? I don't understand that. That's what I'm not sure about. Maybe you could give me your views on that. Who's really in charge of this situation on the West side is the question, and where could it go? I think Trump's giving double messaging. Will he attack Iran? Will he not? Is he going to just support Israel? Is he not going to support Israel in the long term? I don't know. So yeah, just tell me what you think, Roshan.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with 90% of what you said. The only thing I would disagree with was Iran being close to a nuclear bomb. I think they are close to a nuclear bomb. And I think that's their right to have a nuclear bomb as well. Yeah. I've always said that they should have a nuclear bomb.
So you think they're in the process of building one right now, and that Israel's
I hope they are. Well, I hope they are.
I think everyone hopes. Everyone hopes. But do you think they were actually doing it?
Yeah, I think their strategy was to be a threshold power. So they wanted to be at a stage where they didn't have the bomb, but they could get it at short notice if need be. So that's always been the Iranian strategy, is to publicly say they don't want it, they're not going to have it, it's for peaceful purposes, but just in case, if they need to have it, they could get it quickly. That's what I think Iran's been doing all along.
So you think there was a threat there, that Iran was on the verge of getting a nuke?
No, and not a threat in the sense, I don't think Iran, even if they had the bomb, I don't think they would use it against Israel. I think they would use it as a deterrent. So I think, because ultimately if they use it against Israel, they kill all the Palestinians as well. That's the nature of radiation and how it spreads. I think they just want a nuclear bomb to act as a deterrent against attack. That's all. So I don't think that's lies or made up. I think Israel saw a window of opportunity, political, whatever, to attack Iran. From their point of view, it probably made sense. But that's not justifying it, by the way.
Did Trump give them the green light, do you think?
I think we have to assume that there's a high level of coordination, because this is an American regime that's very close to the Israeli regime, probably the most pro-Israeli regime in existence. Now, maybe there are some personal differences between Netanyahu and Trump, but we can only speculate. All we can see is action, judged by actions and intentions and rhetoric. And from that, I think we have to assume that the Israelis and the Americans were probably coordinating and playing the Iranians. And purposely making them think that they were divided when they in fact aren't.
Yeah, so obviously, you know, it is still a bit unclear. There's a fog of war situation going on. We'll have to wait and see how it goes.
But I
think that everyone, from what I've seen of our coverage, from our readers, and from just people in general, from the Muslim world and elsewhere, I think everyone wished that Iran had a nuke. Not because we like nuclear war.
No, the Muslim...
it's not because we want to end the world like how the right-wingers would portray it. As a deterrent, because as we've seen with Pakistan, if you don't have a nuclear bomb as a Muslim country, you're at risk of regime change, you're at risk of getting attacked and invaded and occupied, you're at risk of not being taken seriously as a power. So Pakistan did the right thing getting one. And I think everyone, even Iran's critics within the Muslim world, are thinking, why the heck haven't you got one yet?
I mean, the obvious example is Gaddafi gave up his nuclear program voluntarily in negotiations with Tony Blair, and then 8 years later he's dead in a ditch. The North Koreans got the bomb. No one's thinking about attacking them. What I would say, maybe just to end this now, is that, unless you have anything more to say, Robert, basically the feeling that I'm getting from the Muslim world, obviously we're a Muslim publication, is that Muslims around the world are behind Iran. And I'm talking about Sunni Muslims as well. Even though they have serious misgivings, and some even hate Iran because of Syria and Iraq. But they're still, if it's a straight choice between Israel and Iran, they would choose Iran. Obviously, it's a question of justice. There are Iranian civilians here who aren't involved. They haven't had a role in Syria or Iraq. Also, I think there's a genuine acknowledgement that the big Satan here is Israel, and a Middle East dominated by Israel and America, by extension America, is not a Middle East which serves the interests of the Ummah. At the very least, even if you hate Iran, you have to admit that Iran has been a block and a check on Israel's advancement into its regional ambitions, its greater Israel ambitions. At the very least, you have to give Iran that credit. And Iran, a Middle East without an Islamic Republic of Iran, is a Middle East where Israel will run riot, will have complete dominion. That is not in the Ummah's interests.
Yeah, I think that is a conclusion that a lot of people, even people who are, quite frankly, not just anti-Iran because of politics, but they're anti-Iran because even on religious grounds, they're not fans of Shias, like, for example. Even they're saying similar things like, look, an Islamic Republic, a Shia Islamic Republic of Iran is still better than like a return of a Western installed king or something like that. So yeah, I think people are reaching a conclusion. Final thing I want to ask you, do you think they would dare take out the big guy?
Yes, of course. I think if they could kill him, they would kill him.
Okay, because obviously people are speculating.
No red lines anymore, Robert.
Apparently, according to headlines, the US was offered a chance by Israel, should we assassinate Khamenei, and the US said that they vetoed it. Now, we don't know if that's true or not. It could just be mind games, propaganda or whatever.
Of course they would take him out if they could, yeah.
Really?
Yeah, and I think...
You think that they would go that far?
Oh, yeah. I think we've seen there's no red lines with Israel anymore. They're not moral actors in any sense. And obviously they have the policy of assassination now. It's well established. They took out Hassan Nasrallah. We didn't think they'd take out Hassan Nasrallah. I think they probably could have killed Ayatollah Khamenei before. Obviously we know, for whatever reason, that Israel has infiltrated the Iranian state very deeply. My suspicion is that even people very close to Ayatollah Khamenei are Mossad agents, unfortunately.
So what you're saying then?
The reason why they didn't kill him before is because they felt it probably was a step too far. But now they're in direct war with Israel. I think all gloves are off. I think they would kill him if they could. And Iran, I think, has to mentally prepare for the assassination of Ayatollah Khamenei and have somebody else already in place to take over. Because if Ayatollah Khamenei is the Islamic Republic of Iran, then that means that the Islamic Republic of Iran isn't well rooted or grounded. So they have to prepare for his assassination.
That's a big thing. I think I disagree with you on this. I'll explain my position. I think that they can take him out. And I think you're right. I think Iran's deeply infiltrated, just like we saw in Lebanon. Massive infiltration there. They got all the top guys, including Nasrallah. The US was able to get Soleimani previously. So clearly, getting the top guys is not an issue for America or Israel. I think they can get him. They probably had opportunities already, but I think they won't go for it.
Why?
I think even the US deep state, even the US intelligence knows the danger and the peril of killing one of the Shia's top scholars that not just Iranians politically or the Iranian establishment love and revere, but Shias worldwide.
What would they do? What would Shias worldwide do?
We could see Salman Rushdie style terror attacks, lone wolf terror attacks happening all over the globe. I think that American political, not even military assets could be targeted in attacks. I think that the gloves would be off. I think the IRGC may go back to tactics that we've seen in the past. I use it from the West's perspective, the terminology. We could see embassies getting bombed. We could see buses of Israelis getting bombed.
You make a good point there that I didn't think of.
This will open up, and I know this because, you know, viewers will know I was very embedded in the Shia Muslim world for many, many years. Even the Americans, when they took over Iraq, they knew two things you don't touch when it comes to the Shias. Sistani and the shrines. Leave them alone. Don't mess about with those. Do whatever else you want. Rape, kill, pillage, steal. That's normal American strategy. But when it comes to those two things, just leave them alone. It's not worth it. You're playing with forces you don't understand. And they know that very well. And I think that the same can be applied to Khamenei. He's obviously not on the same level as Sistani. And that's what I say.
Close that advert for the Independent.
Sorry,
don't want to give them a free advert.
I can block that out in the edit. That's fine. But I think that even they know that could instantly escalate and ignite something. And we're talking about fanatic religious backlash that the world hasn't seen before, and they don't want to mess around with that.
You actually make a good point there, because I was thinking of Khamenei as just a political leader, but actually
he's not.
He's probably the second most popular Shia religious leader in the world after Sistani, which makes his significance spread outside of Iran, doesn't it?
Yeah. And you have to remember, going back to
But I still think they would assassinate him, despite saying that.
Yeah.
They don't care.
I think they won't dare this time, but I could be wrong. I'll have to, we'll judge in a future episode.
Let's see what happens, yeah.
But I was right previously. My gut tells me they wouldn't go that far. Plus, if they take him out, I think any hopes of a ceasefire or a negotiation, which I still think Trump ultimately wants. I don't think he wants total war forever.
I think if they go for
if they take him out, it's war forever.
Well, if they
Strait of Hormuz getting shut down, US assets getting attacked.
if they decide on regime change as an official policy, then I think they would assassinate him. If they want a negotiation, they would leave him in place because they want someone to sign that negotiation.
If it was regime change, they could try and get internal Iranian armed groups to attack and kill on their behalf. Obviously, it'd be a long, drawn-out conflict.
Yeah.
You know, so the situation would change then. But I think right now, just like in an hour's time, we get the breaking news he's been hit by an Israeli strike and has died. I don't think they would dare to do that. That's my position.
Would you be shocked? I wouldn't be shocked.
I would be shocked. Yeah, that would shock me.
Yeah, I wouldn't be shocked.
That would be shocked.
I wouldn't be, no.
But I believe it may happen. I believe it may happen, but I don't know what would happen after that. Tell us what you think, brothers and sisters. Do you agree with Roshan's position on this or mine? Or do you have a third alternative view? I think we've covered this very, very well. Let's move on to the next story, Roshan. This will be developing, brothers and sisters. We are covering it all the time on 5 Pillars social media, so do follow and share our stuff to help us as we try and get to the truth. Basically, I've just come back from a trip abroad. It was totally overshadowed by everything because the second I landed in Vienna, Austria, for this story, I think all hell broke loose and it was a massive war. So you may not have even noticed this story, but it did do fairly well when we released the article. There's a major Jewish-led anti-Zionist Congress that has just ended in Vienna. It was a 3-day event, and what it was they organizers picked the city in which the historic Zionist World Conference took place many, many years ago, which snowballed the whole movement, leading towards what we now know, the creation of Israel, Zionist settlements, the mass killing of Palestinians. They picked the same city to launch the anti-Zionist Congress. Now, the effort was to bring about world Jewish intellectuals, academics, big-time thinkers, activists into one room to basically oppose Zionism, to encourage world Jews to abandon this hateful, racist, apartheid political ideology and to go back to the true values of Judaism as they once were, which is actually peace, love, and to be loyal to wherever you are, the state that you're in, and to get on with people ultimately and not steal their land and kill them. These are non-Jewish values, and that many, basically speaking to Jewish intellectuals as I was, they were saying that, quite frankly, Zionism has poisoned the mind of many Jews around the world. And we know from polling that, unfortunately, there is a lot of support for Israel and Zionism.
Probably 80% amongst Jews, I would have thought,
among Jews worldwide. Yeah. However, there is a vocal minority of Jews that speak out against Zionism. We know them very well, and it was a pleasure to see them taking the initiative here and launching this major Congress. Good event, good turnout, good thoughts, good intellect.
What did you learn? What are the top 3 things you learned? Maybe
I think what I learned is that there is a lot of history in Austria related to Zionism, and I think that one of the reasons why Germany and Austria are so supportive or anti-Palestine right now, they're so supportive of Israel, is not just because they were the ones responsible for the Holocaust, but also because they have used the fact that Zionism started there as a kind of way of making up for their past sins. So now they're loyally supporting Zionism. So the Austrian state, one of the reasons the Austrian German state is so hostile to Palestine, they raid events like this normally, is because obviously they're now trying to support the Zionism movement because it was founded then to make up for past sins, things like that. But a lot of these talking points we know already, But I think what's really happening now is that criticism of Jewish support for Zionism is coming under it's being called out now. And to be honest with you,
has it lessened since October, since the genocide? Because I could imagine that maybe on October the 7th, Jewish support for Israel and Zionism would have been at an all-time high. But after 2 years of genocide, has there been a drop-off?
There was a poll conducted in the UK that showed that opinions of Israel, even among British Jews, had dipped. There's no doubt about that, but it's a minnow. You know, it's like a tiny little fish in the water.
Minimal thing, yeah.
It's minimal, very, very minimal. It's not what it should be. I mean,
so it's still around 70% support or something like that.
It's ridiculous, quite frankly. And you know, let's be clear: not all Zionists are Jews. We know that. There's many Christian Zionists, American Zionists. All the prime ministers of this darn country for the past couple of decades have all been proud, staunch Zionists, and none of them are Jewish as far as I can remember. We've not had a Jewish prime minister, but they're all Zionists. So, you know, it's not only a Jewish thing, but the fact that so many members of their community, imagine if 80, 90% of Muslims supported ISIS.
Yeah.
I mean, that would be a serious
and
internal
worse
problem.
Than ISIS.
And actually, it's the reverse. I mean, it's a tiny minority of mentally ill people that were sort of going and joining ISIS. They were radicalized. They were troubled youth. These were people who were, you know, had so many issues that were joining that death cult. And it was widely condemned by all of our scholars, all of our top people. You know, no one supported ISIS from early on once we knew what it was. And, you know, ISIS was a Western intelligence
because
thing,
we have some sense of morality, that's why.
But, I mean, there are rabbis supporting Zionism. There are Louis Theroux, his documentary, Those Settlers. These were religious Jewish settlers watching the destruction in Gaza, cheering it on and getting ready to colonize it. They were like, yes, come on, let's get this war going. We want to colonize.
So did they address this point
around.
about Jewish support for Zionism?
That was addressed.
What did they say?
Do you know what? There's still a battle going on. I think there are some really passionate anti-Zionist Jewish intellectuals who are like, no, this is outrageous. We have to condemn it, and shame on anyone Jewish or non-Jewish who supports it. This is genocide now. It's too late. But there are still some, you know, secular lefty types, the liberal critics of Israel who are sort of liberal Zionists, and they want to push this. Oh, you know, not all Zionism is bad, and there are critics of Netanyahu in Israel who want peace. We want a two-state solution. So there was a little bit of that there as well. You know, but I think they're being hit down now. I mean, there was some Arabs there as well. Dr. Ghada Karmi really took this on in her speech. I recommend you can watch it online. They actually uploaded the full 3-day conference online. Dr. Ghada Karmi's speech was on day 1 of the event. She really went to town. She went to town and called it out. She really went for it. Maybe we'll put it on 5 pillars, in fact. But it was a good conference. Unfortunately, brothers and sisters, apart from the article, I haven't released much from the event because the war has kicked off between Iran and Israel. But keep an eye on it. There should be a video coming out on the YouTube channel where you'll get to hear some of these views from the Jews themselves, from the Jewish mouth.
And generally, Muslims, we need to educate ourselves about Zionism, the history of Zionism, brothers and sisters, because it's something that we have to eradicate. And we need to speak to our friends, family, colleagues at work about and address these kind of issues.
Yeah, because let me just say one thing real quick. It's not just within the Jewish community that you get a little bit of the whole, some Zionism is good. Let's not criticize Zionism too much. Let's just talk about Netanyahu. He's the baddie, really. We also get that in our own dance circles. We also get Muslims who are yellow-bellied and gutless and want to do interfaith with liberal Zionists, the nice ones, the ones who want to make peace with Palestinians. No. All Zionism, let me just be clear about this, because some of you seem a bit confused about this, as if the genocide wasn't enough for you to figure out what's right and what's wrong. Zionism, the whole thing, which is a political colonialist ideology, is bad. Okay, there is no common ground to be found. There's no two-state solution with these guys. There's no interfaith initiatives to bring communities together that's worth getting involved in this. Zionism, all of it, is bad. And the second you find out whether the guy's Jewish, Muslim or Christian or atheist, happens to be a supporter of Zionism in any form, don't interact, don't engage, don't do business with these people, okay? Zionism is bad, and I'm not the only one saying that. Many Jews are saying it as well. This is the ideology behind the genocide. It's the ideology behind everything that's gone wrong in Palestine, in the region, and it's got to go. It's got to go. Just like apartheid in South Africa had to go, this has to go. And we can't do business. We can't find common ground with this. There's no soft solution to this. We have to stand by Islam and our Muslim brothers and sisters and get this ideology defeated. That's it.
What's next?
So you might have to help me with these other stories. Egypt. So this is a big one. So obviously a lot's going on in Egypt. Attempts to break the siege of Gaza. It's not just Israel that's involved in blockading Gaza and keeping it isolated and starved. Egypt, of course, shares a border with part of Gaza, the Rafah border crossing. Massive effort has been made by activists from across the globe to try and break the siege from Egypt, and they've been met with violence, thuggery. They've been getting deported from Egypt by the authorities, and as you can see, horrific scenes were being filmed on the Rafah border as thugs backed by the regime, I believe, were trying to force activists to go away. And horrific situation. Roshan, what's the latest? I haven't been able to monitor it.
Well, I knew this would happen. Obviously, these convoys went from North Africa, but also all around the world, people arriving at Cairo International Airport, other airports in Egypt, all trying to go to Al Arish, which is about an hour away from Rafah, and then march on the border, get some humanitarian aid in, break the siege, etc. But I tried to do something similar. I told you the other day I tried to do something similar about 10 years ago. And we were in Al Arish. It was just about 10 of us, some Egyptians, some internationals, some Muslims, some non-Muslims. We went to the square in Al Arish, the main square, outside the masjid, trying to get more locals to join us. And then suddenly these guys with spades came out, masked men with spades, and they started attacking us with spades. And we were run out of town, basically. And we just drove straight to the Rafah border. We actually made it that far. All the Egyptians weren't allowed in. I was allowed in. I spent a few days in Gaza. But the only reason I was allowed in is because I had a British passport. And there was a small window of opportunity, after the Egyptian revolution. That's why I got in. Otherwise, I wouldn't have got in. So I know that the Egyptian thuggery, they really are the thugs. The Egyptian regime is a thuggish regime. And they use violence and intimidation, especially on their own people, but also on internationals who show any solidarity with Palestinians. And even Palestinians themselves are treated like SHIT, basically, in Egypt. They're treated disgustingly. Any Palestinian will tell you that. And it's just such a shame that Muslims, can be shields, iron domes for Israel in this matter. And there was a video, I'm not sure whether you got it, by the Libyan Grand Mufti. Do you have the video or not?
Yes, we do.
Yeah, so he's basically saying that, I'll let him speak for himself because he's far more eloquent than me, but he's basically saying for border guards in Jordan and Egypt to put their weapons down, to leave their posts and to let people pass into Rafah and into the West Bank, etc. And if they don't do that, they are playing with fire, literally the fire of hell.
وعلى آل مصر ورفح والذين يحرسون المعابر في مصر وفي رفح وفي الأردن عليهم أن يدركوا أنهم مشاركون للصهاينة في قتل إخوانهم. عليهم أن يتوبوا إلى الله ويتركوا هذا العمل، وعليهم أن يتركوا هذا العمل ويعصوا الأوامر ويقتحموا الحدود ولا يسمحوا بهذه المهزلة يضحك عليهم الصهاينة والأمريكان. ومن أجل مرتب ومن أجل شيء تافه لا يساوي شيء جزاؤه وعقابه النار. الله تبارك وتعالى يقول ولا تقتلوا إلى الذين ظلموا فتمسكوا بالنار.
So yeah, pretty powerful words from the Mufti there. I think he's made a number of statements. I remember there was a past story, actually. I can't remember what he said. I think he called for jihad on Israel.
Yes.
Palestine, I think. Something
He's
like
the Grand
that.
Mufti of Libya.
Yeah, so Grand Mufti of Libya, definitely grabbing some headlines there. And he obviously, isn't one for compromise or...
Need more scholars like him, don't we?
Yeah, exactly. There was a Welsh activist who went viral. He might be worth reacting to as well. He basically was pleading with the Egyptian guys as well, begging them. And I think it's a bit of a shame on the Ummah, really. As far as I know, he's a non-Muslim, and he was pleading with them on Islam to do what's right and to help these people dying, these Muslims dying in Gaza.
Genocide of a people. Please, 4 times I've been to Palestine as a nurse. I paid for myself to go. They are hearing me. This man is wearing a Palestinian ring. They are all Muslim. This is a genocide of a Muslim people by Zionists.
They can't hear you. They can't hear you. They're not hearing you. They can't hear you.
Please.
They can't hear you. I'm sorry.
I'm a nurse. I saw them shooting people in refugee camps.
They are waiting for orders, and that's it.
I know.
They can't hear you.
But they don't have to follow the orders.
No, they are following.
They can allow us to stand
They
for
say
Palestine.
they are saying that they don't have choice. Like they don't
You
have
do
another
have a choice. You're humans. We're here for humanity. You are part of humanity. You are my brother. In Islam, you are my brother.
So yeah, obviously the video goes on for a while, but he's pleading with them on Islam
It's a shame, isn't it?
to show humanity,
That's,
and they're just not interested at all. I mean, what a mess.
I mean, they're just foot soldiers, but ultimately they don't have to follow orders. Everyone has a conscience, and they don't have to serve in the army. And but yeah, I suppose our ire should be reserved more for their bosses and their, people like Sisi.
I mean, it's a weird one, isn't it? Because if they open the border, many Palestinians will leave, and then they'll never be able to go back. And Israel, in a way, wants Palestinians to leave. So it's a bit of a mess.
They're not trying to do that. They're trying to get in to give aid,
Yes,
or at least let aid, flow in between.
Yeah,
look, I mean,
that's
Egypt is a
insane.
country where anti-Palestinian rhetoric is very common every day from media personalities in particular. And they're viewed as subhuman. They're viewed as a kind of, fifth columns. That's the word I'm looking for. Fifth columns, and they're trying to take the Egyptians' rights away, and they're immigrants, and just like some of the rhetoric, like
it's basically Reform UK.
Yeah, it's
isn't
Reform
it?
UK. Yeah. It's absolutely outrageous, some of the anti-Palestinian incitement from a Muslim nation like Egypt. Yeah.
Well, sorry to say that the
What
Ummah
else
is
have we
in
got?
right now. Well, there is the National Inquiry into grooming gangs. So it's
Has that happened yet?
according to reports over the past day or so, Keir Starmer appears to have backed down following pressure and has agreed to a national inquiry. This comes after months of right-wing and far-right pressure campaigns demanding a national inquiry. Obviously, from the right-wing's perspective, it's a Pakistani thing, and there's some kind of threat of Pakistani gangs going around grooming and raping all these white girls. So they have an agenda that they're trying to push. But the national inquiry, I wonder what the findings would be. I mean, I assume that the majority of groomers would be white, right?
Oh,
This
yeah,
is a
over
white
80%,
majority
yeah.
nation. So even if a national inquiry goes ahead, we know that these far-right people who are calling for it, they're only going to cherry-pick the bits that suit their agenda, which is an Islamophobic, racist agenda against immigrants. So obviously, I don't know. I mean, I'm not necessarily against a national inquiry. I think you made some good points about it in the past. It would clarify a few things, but obviously it's going to be weaponized regardless of whether we have it or not.
I've got nothing against a national inquiry as long as it's fair. I have the feeling this is not going to be fair. I mean, I know the Dame Louise Casey. I mean, she's been accused herself of Islamophobia in the past with some reports. I mean, look, what's happening here is Keir Starmer is completely caving in to the right-wing agenda. He's been a terrible prime minister for 1 year. It's disaster after disaster, whether it's winter fuel allowance, whether it's, so many other things. He's been just such a damp squib of a prime minister in every sense. And Labour now realise that they are in severe danger of losing the next election. And that's why he's trying to steal the clothes of the right wing a little bit. But I don't think that's going to convince anybody because, rather than just voting for fake right wing, well, I mean, in many ways he is right wing, but fake Keir Starmer, they'll vote for the real thing, which is real right wing fascist Nigel Farage or Robert Jenrick or whatever, whoever it is. So, Yeah, it's pathetic, really. I mean, I think Labour would be much better just kind of sticking to their guns and playing to their own constituency, people who might actually vote for them, because the right wing aren't going to vote for them anyway, quite frankly.
Yeah.
But what I think is, obviously, it's going to be weaponized. Even I think in the next few days there could be riots because they'll really kind of hone in on the alleged overrepresentation of Pakistanis in certain areas. And I think in certain areas there probably is an overrepresentation, but it's not as if, you know, there is a kind of epidemic of Pakistani Muslims raping white girls. What you have is a few hundred criminals doing it. And as I said in my tweet earlier on today, I'm not sure if anybody's seen it yet because I haven't checked my Twitter, but I've said, look, capital punishment for anybody who is convicted for being a grooming gang member, whether you're Muslim, Pakistani, white, black, Christian, Hindu, Sikh, hang them all. That's all I have to say about it. This is something that transcends religion and race. It's nothing to do with race. It's nothing to do with religion. It's to do with criminality and perverts who deserve to be strung up.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, you know, we've said this in the past, in past shows, you know, if they just allowed us to implement a bit of Sharia on these criminals, deal with our criminals ourselves or whatever, they'd be dealt with once and for all. You know, they wouldn't mess around again, okay? You can interpret it how you want, but they'll be dealt with. Proper capital punishment, they'll be dealt with. But it's just, it's nasty. We have groups that are weaponizing one of the most disgusting, vile crimes that you possibly can, just to score political points, because we're dealing with, these are grifters, these are populists, these are people who are trying to get elected or to get to a position of prominence in this country, and one of the best ways to do that is through fear and lies and conspiracies. And so they're taking something which we should all be in agreement on, you know, if a groomer, whatever, like you say, skin color or race or whatever, needs to be dealt with, you know what I mean? And if this is a crime wave, if there is an epidemic of this happening in Britain, it's not Muslims' fault. You know, it's the state. Why hasn't the state been dealing with this? And one thing I want to make clear, because I think some Muslims, they react. So when the right wing goes and attacks and calls for a national inquiry, Muslims think, well, maybe we shouldn't back a national inquiry or something like that. I've heard some mixed views on this. And I understand they're worried it'll be weaponized. They think maybe we should not go for one because it'll just be used as a stick to beat us with. But that's not the right view to have. And I think that Muslims need to be very careful about being aligned to the Labour Party, who have resisted calls for an inquiry. I think that your strategy, just saying, yeah, let's have a national inquiry, but let's also be aware of the far-right attacks and the weaponization, the fact that it won't be fair. Muslims need to be really careful. The Labour Party is so hated, so loathed, so useless, so stupid and rubbish that it actually would make Muslims look worse if we had any association with the party. The party would be like attacked by the right for having association with Muslims, right?
Yeah.
I think Muslims need to be careful about our image being associated to these bunch of absolute useless, nasty idiots. Do you know what I mean? That's just a little point that I want to make. I think it's something which we should bear in mind going forward, because you know what will happen in the next election? A lot of Muslims will turn around and say, oh, I know Labour's terrible, they're the party of genocide, but, you know, they're the best option. We've got to keep reforming.
They're going to lose anyway. Muslims want to know Muslims, so they're going to lose. Muslims
don't back these liars, this party of genocide, but not just for the genocide. Don't back them, because if we do, all the right-wing propaganda, the conspiracies about Labour being the Muslim party of this country is going to come back to bite us. Do you know what I mean?
But this ain't going to end well, Robert, because what they're probably going to say is that 9% of these cases are Pakistanis, whereas only 6% of the population is Pakistani. And they're going to use that figure to label all Pakistanis and all Muslims as problematic. That's what's going to happen. So this isn't going to end well for us. Maybe we should strategize in terms of how we respond to it, because it's definitely going to be weaponized. Yeah,
I think just strong dawah and just not getting the wrong people to appear on TV and talk about it, you know. I think the ultimate response to it is let's kill them. Let's honestly, in a I was going to say in a halal way,
in a way that's, let's bring back capital punishment,
Yeah.
okay, for grooming cases.
Yeah, let's have some proper deterrence for these crimes.
And let's have some proper deterrence for these crimes. And anyone that's been involved in a cover-up, especially, needs to be jailed as well.
Yeah.
We need to go in harder than they would go in, you know. And
do you know what else I blame for this this epidemic? I blame the collapse of religion in this society. You know, the fact is that I think young people, when they reach a certain age, they are vulnerable.
Yeah.
They're vulnerable to groomers, to predatory behavior, to ills in society which encourage them to go out, get drunk, do bad things, basically. I won't go into details, but use your imagination. And that's why we have so many women in the society who grow up and they have terrible experiences as teenagers, you know, all sorts. Even things that, like, do you know how normal it is? I don't even know if you know this, Roshan, but do you know how normal it is for, like, young girls who grow up and they're just like, they're not even part of this grooming gang thing, but they are basically groomed. And they just like deal with it. It's like, yeah, that's how it is when you're a teenager. You know, you have bad experiences. Alhamdulillah, Islam is totally against boyfriend-girlfriend situations, so it's not such a community issue for us. But, you know, I mean, you look at non-Muslim girls and you feel sorry for them. They grow up and they have all these terrible experiences as teenagers, getting used, abused and everything. Their parents not teaching them what's right and wrong. There's no religious institution teaching them what's right and wrong. The government doesn't care. You watch TV and they think it's empowering, and then by the time they're 30... and they look back and they go, oh, that was a horrible experience as a teenager. I wish I'd known better. It's because religion has broken down. This culture promotes filth as if it's good. And yeah, I think that should be discussed.
But also we shouldn't underestimate also within our own communities. Unfortunately, we've got a lot of work to do in our own communities in terms of, you know, Islamizing the Muslim community itself. And teaching people their deen and teaching people right and wrong, because you know, Muslims, you know, there are lots of criminals in the Muslim community. And there are lots of people that are far away from Islam as it is possible to be in the Muslim community itself.
I mean, for a country which hates marriage, hates, you know, gender segregation, hates, you know, dressing modestly, for it to have problems with sexual harassment, groping, rape, grooming even, I mean, come on, I see a link there, you know? You hate everything.
One leads to another,
You hate things that protect you from all of this. Religion. Do you know what I mean? That's why, that's one of the reasons why I'm so happy with Islam, because Islam don't mess about when it comes to this stuff, you know? We protect our young and we protect our women, and that's it. So, you know, there's a lot more to discuss. To be honest, that was the main stories from this week. Was there anything I've missed?
Oh, you know, the Centre for Media Monitoring report.
Oh, that's a big one.
I don't know whether
we would have been kicking ourselves. I'll find it. You introduce this because you know what's going on.
So basically today, I think they tweeted about it today. If you go to their page, you'll probably find it. Centre for Media.
I think you condemn them. I'll let you explain why.
Yeah. So the Centre for Media Monitoring is a Muslim institution. It was linked to the MCB, Muslim Council of Britain. I think now they're separate from the MCB, and they have their own kind of setup and organisation. In the past, they've done some really good stuff. They released a report on GB News about 6 months ago, which is fantastic. And they've done a report on the BBC and its coverage of Israel-Palestine since October the 7th. And they have found that there is inherent bias in the BBC towards Israel. Now, I haven't read the report, but I have a feeling that it's probably well-researched and an outstanding report, judging by the GB News one. However, they have really, really shot themselves in the foot by basically inviting Alistair Campbell to review the report. I'll explain to you if you don't know who Alistair Campbell is in a second. So he is basically endorsed this report. He's in the report. I'm not sure if he's actually going to be at the event, which is happening in Parliament tomorrow, I think, Tuesday. So Alistair Campbell is basically a man, I believe, who should be behind bars as a war criminal. He was Tony Blair's spin doctor. For people who are, you know, maybe under 35 or something like that, or under 30, you may not know who Alistair Campbell is, but he is the guy who manufactured consent within the UK for the Iraq War. Now, the Iraq War was the crime of the century. Before Gaza, the Iraq War was the crime of the century. The illegal invasion of that country led to over 1 million deaths and led to a spill out of chaos, death and destruction across the Middle East, which is still happening today. You could even say what's happening in Gaza and Iran now is a continuation from the war that these guys began in 2003. And he sexed up a dossier in particular. He said that Iraq could hit the UK within 45 minutes, which was widely debunked, but it was there, and it was used by Tony Blair to manufacture consent in Parliament for the Iraq war. This guy should be behind bars as a war criminal. Yet, the Center for Media Monitoring, which says it's a Muslim organization, has invited this guy to endorse its report, and for all I know, he might actually appear in Parliament tomorrow with them.
That's outrageous.
Absolute outrageous disgrace. The Centre for Media Monitoring undermined their own work, their own excellent work, by inviting this guy to appear. It's an absolute disgrace. What soft touches we are as Muslims. You know, the guy can basically, be involved in the crime of the century, which led to the death of 1 million Muslims, and he's getting feted by this, quite frankly, disgusting organization, which now I have completely washed my hands of.
Wow.
I asked you and Dilly whether I should carry their report yesterday, and you said, yeah, you should carry the report because obviously it's telling about the, how the BBC bias towards Israel, and you should say that they invited Alistair Campbell. That was your position. I have to say I disagree with you. And I'm not going to, you can write it up if you want to. I'm not going to go anywhere near this organisation.
I must admit, I do not believe what passed their mind. I mean, do they sit?
What planet are they living on?
They obviously, it's not like they don't know who this guy is, because, we're not dealing with Gen Z researchers behind this, I'm sure of it. So they know who he is, they know the background, I'm confident of that. What on earth possessed them to think that this was the right decision? I mean, it's appalling. I mean, what's next? We're going to have Tony Blair back in the next project. We're going to have George W. Bush as the front man for the organisation. I mean, what's next? What is next? I mean, I can't believe it.
I mean, it's a disgrace that this guy is even on British TV, and he has a very big podcast now called Rest is Politics.
The state rallies around there.
Yeah, he has been completely reintegrated into British society, and he even talks about mental health issues because apparently he's got mental health issues. Well, I feel sorry for the mental health of his victims in Iraq.
Yeah.
Not his mental health.
Yeah, generations of mental health there.
He's a scumbag. He's a total scumbag, and the Centre for Media Monitoring is a disgrace. Yeah. Absolute disgrace.
Well, I don't know what to say. I mean, there is a story there, but they've completely ruined their report now. I mean,
they've ruined their reputation.
They should
I wash my hands of them.
They should be answering questions,
And you know what, Robert? I gave them a chance as well. As soon as I found out about this, I emailed them, asking them to drop Alistair Campbell. That was 2 days ago. And today they come out with a report with Alistair Campbell in it.
Wow.
Gloves are off as far as I'm concerned.
Wow, what a total embarrassment. It's things like, the anti-imperialist left, we have issues with them sometimes, and, we complain about them for various reasons. But then when stuff like this happens within our own community, they would look at us and laugh, because even the left wouldn't make some weird, peculiar decision like this. At least they kind of close ranks and they know who the good guys and the bad guys are. But Muslims, time and time again, you always find Muslims, some in our community, unfortunately, making these horrendous decisions.
They've even got Owen Jones endorsing the report as well. I mean, I personally wouldn't have Owen Jones endorsing anything, but at least he's not responsible for the deaths of millions of Muslims.
Brothers and sisters, there is obviously a lot of serious stuff happening, and we do acknowledge that as well. We are covering it as professional journalists, and please do tune in.
So I don't think we're going to do a Muslims Uncensored on. Obviously, this is like an emergency podcast. Normally we do it on Wednesdays.
Oh yeah.
But so I don't think we're going to do it this Wednesday.
Yeah, so not this Wednesday, but we'll see how the situation judges. It will either be, I guess, the following Wednesday or soon.
I think we'll play it by ear. To be honest,
play it by ear.
It might be a case of not sticking to the Wednesday schedule for this crisis.
If a nuclear bomb goes off, we will drag ourselves.
You'll be on holiday.
We will drag ourselves.
I'll be doing my loft conversion. I don't have a loft conversion, brothers and sisters.
Well, there we go. So do like, share, and subscribe. It helps the channel immensely. And if you like the channel, If you like the show, help the channel grow. That's my new catchphrase. So yeah, thank you very much, guys. Assalamu alaikum. Ma salama.
Assalamu alaikum.